Hi, everybody. This is Johnny with Tuned In with InterSys, and I have the pleasure and privilege of having a good friend of mine from the past and present. She's a TV host and lifestyle expert, Wanda Colon. Thank you, Wanda, for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here and it's so good to see
It's
you.
always a pleasure. Yeah, and it's been so long too. We were talking before we started how long it's been. It's been way too long, but we've
It
always kind
has
of
been.
stayed connected, which is always nice. And for those that are kind of just trying to find the connection of our history, it really goes back to when I had my first real job out of high school, and I got this privilege of working like a co-op program from Reading High School, and I don't even know if they still do that, but hopefully they do. But I remember at the time it was kind of a new thing, and I got to work half the day at a bank that no longer exists, but back then it was in Temple, Pennsylvania. And
Right.
the first person that greeted me going through the door, I remember you were there waiting, and you greeted me with your smile, and it was a great experience for me. And actually, I never had thought of going into banking. That wasn't any of my thought or ambition. I actually was more interested in graphic arts, but I knew that that was a very difficult industry to get into to make a living.
hmm
So I guess I was always good with math. Took the test from the bank, and long story short, I was selected to be the guinea pig for this co-op program. So you were always very available, and one of the things I really appreciated. I'm just going to talk some funny stories. I remember this. I don't know if you remember this, but I do. So we talk about culture. We talk about the real kind of series that we're doing now. Last year, our theme was life before viral, which was really about putting what's important first, right, and not
hmm
really worrying about virality. Everything's become such a focus on that,
Right.
but really taking care of ourselves and our family. And also we're really big on, obviously, with my space of language access and diversity, and making sure that those that are usually underserved are taken care of. So one thing that I remember with Wanda, we worked at a bank where we had a lot of immigrants working in the
Totally.
mushroom, um, I guess you could call it the
Industry.
industry.
Yeah.
And they would
Yeah.
come to cash their checks, and a lot of times they would have their resident alien card. That was their form of identification. And we had I guess, a client who really got upset because they didn't bring their ID, and that was policy. So we asked for it, and then they made a comment to the effect of, "Well, if I was, if I was Spanish, you probably would, cash my check." And I don't know if you remember this, but you came out of nowhere because you were watching it, and you were like, "You know what, sir? I don't appreciate your." And you were very, really polite, so I want to be clear. You were very, with tact and everything, but you were very firm. And you said, if you don't have your ID, you're going to have to leave. And I'm Puerto Rican. I guess so it's like I remember you said that, like, so I'm like, I'm Puerto Rican, and I was just like, okay, it's just the way you said it, though, was just so, like,
Just so you
yeah, just so you
know.
know, much an advocate for those that were really, unfortunately, at the time there was a lot of discrimination, and I'd like to say it's not.
It wasn't an easy job. It really wasn't. It was difficult because there are times where your heart's in it and you just want to help people, but it is what it is. But it wasn't an easy job, and I appreciated you coming in, anyone bilingual, because I grew up, I learned English, first, but my parents were really good at making us speak Spanish in the home. And so we spoke Spanish, but they spoke English. So my parents were completely fluent. And that really opened up a lot of doors for me. But your Spanish is a lot better than mine. I always say that I speak Spanglish. That's why I'm all about Spanglish.
That's it's always, I always say, it's always good for everyone to give their best, and that means a lot, because when you have someone who really doesn't know any English, they appreciate any level of Spanish, and it really shows that you care. And I think that's something that I always, if nothing else, I remember that you always cared for people, and I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Because a lot of you
Thank
had a
you.
position where, quite honestly, there were very few women in leadership roles at that time. That was not very common in the
So,
banking.
Johnny, I have to tell you, I majored in theater and fine arts, so I get you. I went with what I was super passionate about, and I'm awful at math. And somehow I was able to become the manager at that office. And then I even got promoted to AVP. And I've always felt like I'm going to be found out, because I never liked math, but I loved people. And I feel like that's really what opened the doors for me, is just that I really loved to help people, especially people in my community, especially Latin people, Hispanics. That's kind of where my heart was. I take after my father that way. He was always a leader in the community and really instilled in us that we have to, like, never forget where you come from, basically.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And those are the roots, right, that we have that end up really
Yeah.
influencing our trajectory. So then, obviously we kind of moved on from that, and we were talking about how long it's been since we saw each other. It wasn't far after that. There was this big gap. So a lot of things have happened. One of the things that I was keeping tabs. You did actually go pursue your passion later,
We
which was
did.
awesome. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did that come about? Because you moved from Pennsylvania, you did traveling, and you got some really big opportunities that were really exciting and few people get to experience.
Yeah, so I want to say it was 2000. Around 2000, 2001, I decided to move to California. I was already auditioning here in New York and I was booking small jobs. And I had an agent who was bi-coastal and said, the climate in Los Angeles is where you should be. And so I moved to Los Angeles, and it was a big deal because my entire family is in Redding. And so I moved to California, and it wasn't easy. It was really difficult. I remember the first Christmas that I was completely alone, and I called home and everybody's together, and I'm just like opening up a can of chicken noodle soup and they're all having like pasteles and rice and beans, and I literally just wanted to get on that plane and fly home. But I was like really committed to trying to give my career my all. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I knew that I wanted to do anything in the acting world. I had done a lot of theater here, but theater wasn't as prevalent or as easy to get into in Los Angeles. So I started doing commercials. I was in a J.C. Penney commercial, a Mervyn's commercial, a GMC commercial, and then I really set my sights on being on HGTV. And the reason was because I minored in fine arts and I did a lot of set design, and it was kind of an easy transition, and I was obsessed with HGTV. And I was working with, a manager, and I finally got an audition. And it was really hard because you go into a room and there's hundreds of people, and everybody wants this one
Sure.
job. And I sat there and I almost psyched myself out. Like, I thought, oh, well, she looks better than I do, and she's cuter, and she's this. And then I just sat down and thought, I really want this. I deserve this. I'm just going to go for it. And I remember the audition, I like nailed it. Like, I was so excited. But after that, I had 5 callbacks. So each time they narrow it down. So I was told that the first audition, there were like 500 girls that they were looking
Yeah.
at. The really cool thing is that it was at a time where HGTV was trying to be a lot more diverse. So they were looking for somebody Latina, African American. They wanted someone of color. So I was like, I was super tan. I wore my hair super curly, I really wanted to represent.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so I had like 5 callbacks, and they had narrowed it down to 4 girls. And I remember the last audition, I was super nervous and I didn't do as well as I did the first. So I left there really kind of kicking myself. And then a week later, I found out that they gave it to someone else. So I was
Sure.
devastated, but my manager was like, Wanda, this was your first audition. I've never had somebody that in their first audition, they get this far. They'll remember you. But inside my heart, like, I really felt like this was mine to lose. And so for whatever reason, Johnny, this is so weird. Like 2 weeks later, the girl that they selected, it didn't work out.
Okay.
And then they called me and asked me to be on set the next day.
Wow.
And when I first was looking to become go on HGTV. I wrote in my calendar, like I put it out in the universe, like I am going to be on HGTV by June 15th, and this was like in December, I
Wow.
wrote this. And then they asked me to be on set. And so we made it happen. I shot my first episode. I went to the production meeting the following week. And when I opened up my calendar, it was June 15th.
Get out. Wow.
I was just like, I was so floored that my eyes teared up.
Sure.
And I remember my producer at the time was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm literally like, I can't even believe this is happening." And I showed her my calendar. Back then we had paper
Right, right.
calendars. And so, and this was about 2004.
Okay.
And so she says, she just looked at me and she's like, "Isn't it crazy how the universe sometimes smiles at you?"
Right.
And I just literally, I was like in tears. And I just kind of remember thinking like it was a long journey. It took 4 years to get there. Like I got there in 2000 and I didn't book that big job until 2004. And there were a lot of ramen noodle nights before that,
Sure.
and a lot of auditions and a lot of rejection. And so anyone out there that's like trying to pursue that, get tough skin, but don't give up.
Right.
I feel like I was at a point where I was just about to give up. I was just about to go home because I just felt like this is just too hard.
Right.
Every single day you go on auditions and every day you hear no.
Yep.
So it's really one of the toughest things that I've ever done, but I feel like it's really helped me throughout my whole life. I know that it's given me tougher skin. I'm able to take rejection well. I know that it's not always personal or whatever, and still move on. And I feel like all of the things that I didn't book led me to the important things that I did.
Sure.
But at the time, it's really, really hard.
Absolutely.
It's really difficult. So, then I was on HGTV for 4 seasons, which was unbelievable for me. Like it was so great. And then I moved to TLC and I was the design assistant.
Okay.
So I wasn't the lead designer on HGTV. Angelo Sermalis was the lead designer. He was amazing. I learned so much from him. I'll never forget being on set the first week. Talk about imposter syndrome, right? So you're on set and they're like, "Hey, Wanda, do you have time for an OTF?" And I was like, "Do you have time to go to the bathroom?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I call my manager. I'm like, "What's an OTF?"
That's great.
And she's like, "Oh my God, it's just an on the fly interview." I'm like, "Oh no," I had no idea what I was doing.
Just go with
But
it.
just like anything, you learn as you go, right?
Right.
You learn on the job, just like the bank. I was awful at math, but I knew that my staff had to be good at math.
Right. There you go.
So, just like anything, you learn as you go. And then I moved on to TLC's Homemade Simple, and I was the lead designer in that show. And I did that for 6 seasons. And what I loved about that show is that we traveled all over. So that was really, really cool. It was so rewarding and so amazing. So that's kind of how I got started. It was a pretty easy transition from theater set design to interior design, taking classes in interior design and just kind of moving towards that direction. And that's kind of where I stayed.
Awesome.
That's the industry that I stayed in and that I have the most passion for. And I love it.
Yeah.
I really do. I love transforming people's spaces and making magic happen.
Awesome. So the theme for this year that I'm going to be soon posting our yearly kind of mission statement blog is more than bilingual, and everything you said kind of resonates because I think that language, if I were oversimplify, the ability to communicate effectively, which ties to everything you did, everything you say. Obviously, when you're in front of, when you want to, entertain, when you want to be an entertainer and any type of those performing arts, the ability to be comfortable with people and connect with them, really, I feel, in a lot of ways, similar to what you described, has been a secret to my success, where I do have that same feeling of imposter syndrome of like, my goodness, I make a living just talking to people, really, if I were to oversimplify. Right. But do you feel like Is that a fair assessment that, it's not just the language? Because I think when it'll go into our theme, which is more than bilingual, is that it's great to be bilingual, obviously, but beyond that, there's culture. There's there's
I was
everything else
going
that you
to say
said.
it's the
Yeah,
culture.
and like you said, the pasteles and adobo and all those type of different things that you really, when you get to that level of the food and the music and all those different things, you're able to really be in fields that you probably never anticipated. I was in banking for like 20 plus years. That was not my ambition, but I think at the end of the day, what I was really good at was similar to what you're saying, is engaging with people, making them feel
Hmm.
connected, so that when an opportunity opened up, like it did for you, you were top of the mind of like, let's call Wanda back, right? And let's have her, see if she's still available. And do you feel like that is kind of, and again,
I
I'm oversimplifying it, but do you feel that's a fair assessment?
I do. I do. I feel like, it's something that we take for granted. And almost like when you're a kid, you kind of like don't showboat it, right? You're all like, you're trying to fit in to, wherever your environment is. And then you get older and realize, wow, how fortunate. I feel so fortunate growing up with a large Puerto Rican family because we love to procreate,
Yes.
I mean, so we have like tons of cousins, and just having that culture, I feel set me apart, having that connection and having the parents that I did that really, they came here from Puerto Rico, they came to the States and they had to learn English and they had to try to fit in and they had to try to become successful against all odds. But what I love is that they showed us that work ethic,
Yes.
but they never ever denied who they were. Like they were so proud of their heritage and their culture, and that was so important to
Right.
them. And I feel so fortunate, because listen, the States, it's who isn't an immigrant,
Right.
right? I mean, it is a huge melting pot, but people, you forget where you come from. And so my parents really instilled that in us, and I'm so grateful for it. And I feel like in everything that I do, even now, I'm one of the co-founders of the Academy of Home Staging and Design. This year, my goal is to do a bilingual class,
Awesome.
right? And so it's not completely fluent in Spanish because, like I said, I feel like there's always words that I'm like, ¿Cómo se dice this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted it to be bilingual because it's English is my first language and I'm more comfortable with it. But I really wanted to open this door to, I get so many students that are from Mexico, that are from, all over, that don't speak English or English is their second language. And I want to give them the opportunity to be in this incredible, lucrative and fun career.
Yeah.
And so that is one of my goals for this year. So I literally
Awesome.
just finished writing the manual in Spanish. And so
That's awesome.
maybe you can help me out and look at
Sure.
it and
Yeah, I'd
make
be
sure
happy to.
I have it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. And so,
But I feel like it does open doors for you. Like it creates opportunities that, I wouldn't have had. And so it's super rewarding for me that I'm able to share this with people that maybe wouldn't be able to take a class because they feel intimidated or the opportunity just isn't there.
yeah, awesome. I want to kind of just, if you have an experience, I'm sure you have many, but with Homemade Simple, because you got to travel a lot. Um, any interesting situations that you were in that you look back on that were very unique, that stood out to you, that you're willing to share with us?
Oh my goodness, there were so many. I'll tell you one experience. It's kind of a little crazy. Um, it's kind of a funny story. It was right before I booked a really big commercial for GMC. I was like I had to borrow money from my brother. Rent was due, and he said, "You know what? You don't." He's like, "I'll give you the money to come home." And I was like, he's like, but maybe it's time for you to think of coming home, right? And so I auditioned for this one, what I thought was a modeling gig. And I was like, okay. And so they called me back and everything. And it was an escort service.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was just kind of like, are you kidding me? Right. And I kept thinking, all I kept visualizing was my mom's face. Like, that's what you went to LA for?
Right, right, right. Wow.
So I was like, I even went to church. I went to church and I was like, God help me, like, please let me book something big because, I can't have done all this.
Sure, sure.
And I give it to, listen, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But I was just like, this was not something that I could possibly do.
Right.
And, I
As we
remember
say in
just calling.
Spanish, no pa tanto, right?
No, right? I was like, OMG, right? And so I called her back and I was like, thanks for the opportunity, but no thanks. And then the very next day, I booked a big commercial.
Okay.
So that to me, I felt like it was a lesson, like, stay true to who you are.
Yep.
There's gonna be times where you are gonna be tempted to do something that's so against the grain of who you are and who you were brought up to be. And it may feel like the only way out, but just stay true and doors will open and work hard. And as far as the show, every week there was always something kind of amazing and fun. Because we traveled, we got to meet so many cool people. Another really fun thing that happened to me while I was shooting Homemade Simple was I got a puppy.
Okay.
It was the first time I ever owned a dog. Somebody in the crew had hit a dog in her car, and it was a little puppy. And so she took it to the vet and, to the animal hospital. And because he was part pit, they were going to put him down.
Okay.
So she took a picture of him and took him and showed the picture at everybody on set. And then she looked at me and she's like, please adopt this dog. And I was like, I've never owned a dog before. But yeah, it was the first time I owned a dog, and my dog traveled with me everywhere I went.
That's awesome. Yeah, awesome. So I want to just kind of mention a little bit about the resilience before we'll definitely get to the academy in a minute because we want to talk about that. But I think there was also something else that's worthy of when we talk about culture. We talk about everything that you expressed and where we come from. I think that's something that's kind of intangible that we tend to just have that resiliency because I think, I was just reading, on the front page of what's out there right now, we're talking about Brad Pitt and I think Jason Priestley. They were like roommates back in like when they were nobody and how they were like living in a bad part of LA and all these things. And similarly, you have like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and similar stories of you see the results and you see all of the successes, but you don't really see a lot of or talk more about how they got there, and they have that usually common denominator of, like you said, eating on ramen noodles or whatever. I think actually that's what Jason Priestley was specifically saying. So I guess what I wanted to just touch on is, I think with our culture, when we have whether it's any part of Latin America or South America, we'll just say Latino, Hispanics included, we usually do have kind of that example of resiliency that ends up being kind of a superpower because you do need a certain level of almost lunacy to do what we do, right? Because like, our family, nothing, God bless them. I've had similar situations where it's like, are you sure this is going to work out? Or, maybe, it's time to kind of just, do something else. But because it takes a certain mindset. And I think that having those experiences with whether it's our parents or, the previous generation, I think that a lot of times that does help us continue forward, even though it may not make sense for most people.
Mm-hmm. I agree. For me, my dad was really so influential for me. Like I look back at all of my major decisions and I feel like I made better decisions because of him. It was so important for us to be educated. So my mom and my dad got married. My mom was only 16 when she married my father. Wow. he made her go to Reading High. He made her finish. And I look back and like his brothers were here and some of his cousins, and they were all married. And my mother was the only one. All of the other women, they got factory jobs, whatever. My mother went and finished high school and also went to RAC.
Okay. Wow.
And so, and she said she hated it. She just wanted to kind of be with her girls and work in the factory, and it would be easier for her, but it forced her to learn English. It forced her to do more. Not that they're, listen, even working at a factory, all of that was hard for our people, without being able to know the language and everything. But I think it really took her out of her comfort zone. Sure. Right? Because now she's at Reading High and she's married, and my dad was older, and then she gets pregnant and she's still in Reading High. And she has to go to school pregnant, not really knowing English. And now there's a lot of programs, the ESL programs, where they didn't have that back then. She really jumped in the fire. And so I just remember my mom was amazing. Like she had a professional job. She worked for the state as she was an interpreter, and she helped Latinos get jobs. And it's kind of like when you grow up in that work ethic, it's kind of hard not to succeed.
I agree. And my mom also worked third shift, Hershey Ludens. Shout out to, I don't even know if they're even Hershey's. I don't know if they're still in Reading, but
Hershey is, I don't think Ludens is. I used to love the Ludens cough drops.
My mom would come home smelling like menthol or chocolate. I think she probably despises both now, but she was a worker. So that work ethic, talking about work ethic, you applied it to your passion. And so you have the academy now. Of home staging and design. Tell us about that. How did that all come together?
So after the show, after Homemade Simple got canceled, it actually moved networks, but my contract was with TLC and Discovery, and it moved to OWN. And so they wouldn't let me out of my contract, so I couldn't move on. I was kind of ready to just be in Los Angeles, because the first 6 months of shooting Homemade Simple, I only slept in my own apartment like 10 days. Wow. And not consecutive days. So I was always on the road, and it's hard on relationships. It's hard on your body. And so I was ready to kind of say, okay, I want to stay here. I want to build my business here. I want to do more residential design and maybe some commercial design. And so I partnered with Kim Capellish from Style My Space. She was a premier stager in Los Angeles. So her business just did home staging, but she was the founder of the Academy of Home Staging. Okay. So she certified home stagers. So I found her and I approached her and I said, let's be partners. And so she agreed. We met a few times. We came up with this game plan, and I became partners with her, and I head up the interior design program. So I became the lead interior designer at Style My Space, and then we created the Academy of Interior Design. And so that's kind of how that all started. And it was just kind of amazing. She's such a visionary, and I think that's why we work so well together, because we have a big vision. And she kind of is super creative, and that's kind of how we both work. We're very creative people, but we've managed to do what we love to do and work in our passion, because that's kind of the hardest thing to do sometimes, is to be able to work in your passion and make money doing it, because at the end of the day, you got to make a living, right?
Absolutely.
My days of ramen noodles are long past. I don't want that anymore. So, we both rolled up our sleeves and we created this academy, and I'm so proud of it. Before COVID, we did not do any virtual classes. Everything was live. And what I loved was when you go live to the academy, we do hands-on. Like, you go to my client's home,
Okay.
you create a space. We have a warehouse. Her warehouse is 10,000 square
Wow.
feet because she doesn't rent furniture when she does stagings. She uses her own
Okay.
furniture. And so she can stage up to 40 homes at one
Wow.
time. Yeah, it's a big.
That's
We
impressive.
created a big
That's
company,
awesome.
and so we give them the experience of this is what it looks
Yeah.
like to actually be in this business and be successful in this business. And so we also have coaching programs. We really work with our students. You know, I always say to them, like, your success is my success. Being part of their journey, you know, is so rewarding, especially when you see somebody young come into your industry and say, I want to do this, and you give them and help them with the resources they need to be successful. It's like,
Yeah.
hello, you know, it's like I'm doing it all over again, but they're putting in the work and I'm just getting all the like, it's so
Yeah.
awesome that I get to see and be part of that
Right.
and kind of show them my journey and let them know, like, don't make this mistake that I made, you
Sure.
know. So they're learning from us. I My other instructor, his name is George Cambron. He's also bilingual. His family is from Mexico. And so yeah, we've noticed that a lot of Latinas and Latinos are interested in this. But they don't want to like spend 4 years in
Sure.
college, but they need the education, right? So we provide that. And so that's why I wanted to create a scholarship as well. I wanted to create a scholarship for people who have the passion but don't have the financial means to take the class. And so that's how we reconnected. I was in a contest where I was hoping to win so that I could create a scholarship for the academy. And we're working on that. So my first step was to create a bilingual manual. So I'm done with that. It's in the stages of getting, proofread. And we're working on different ways of creating scholarships for people. So
Amazing.
I'm really proud of it. It's funny because I look back at my career in interior design and I always say, like, I'm the Cher of interior design, because you have to evolve,
Sure.
right? So at first I'm like an artist, I'm a starving artist, then I'm working for a small firm and I'm even like this firm that I started in, I was like, I'll get your groceries. Just give me the opportunity. Like, I'll go grocery shopping for you. I'll cook for you. I'll pick up your laundry. As long as you teach me, how to run a business in interior design, as long as I have this in my resume and I can start building a portfolio. And I went from that to HGTV to where I was the assistant, doing all of the grunt work that assistants do,
Right.
to then being on TLC and being the lead designer, to then owning my own company, right? And so it's like, it's kind of amazing to be at this point in my life where I can look back and go, oh my God, like, this is pretty cool that now I can share this with somebody who I can see myself in, right? That's young and hungry and it's like, this is what I want. And I'm like, how cool that I can be part of that
Yeah.
journey. So it's really like amazing. I feel super blessed. I'm married to the most amazing man who you know, cheers me on and listens to my whims and says, you can do it, and
That's
so
awesome.
I feel super blessed to be where I am. As you know, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and so I went through a really rough patch in my life where I was literally told that I had like 6 months to live. And I look back and just think, like, I'm so, so blessed and so lucky to be here. And 58 looks pretty good,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
58 looks pretty
Yeah.
good. So, yeah, so this is it's been my journey and my pleasure to share it with you.
Yeah.
And, here's to some more experiences. I'm open to more experiences and I'm excited about the future of the Academy.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Well deserved. I think, you've always, to me, been one of the hardest working women that I've personally gotten to,
Thank you.
besides my mother. I'm gonna get that out of the way, right? Shout out
Yeah,
to my
yeah,
mom. But besides my mom, you're in that top three, top four people.
thank
Because I
you.
think, it's very easy to give up when you see the rejection or things not really taking shape the way you initially plan, and to be able to share, like you said, the what shortcuts, if you want to call it that, or um, the sometimes there is no shortcut. Sometimes you have to
Right.
understand that it is going to be painful. I think one of the things I remember reading about Elon Musk, and he had mentioned about three pillars of business, one of them being pain, and it's very true. Usually those that are high performers and successful, they all experience their level of pain, and I think when I train future interpreters, which is what I do, I always include that because I think, some things just there is no shortcut. You have to go through it, you
Right.
have to experience it for yourself, and you have to have that resiliency because there are going to be times that you have to roll up your sleeves and endure some things that are just not going to be comfortable.
Hmm.
So I do want to respect your time. A few things that I was, just kind of wanted to touch on before we wrap up. Where can someone connect with you as far as I'm interested in attending the academy? Can they go
Hmm.
online? If so,
Yep.
how does that work?
Yep. It's the Academy of Homestaging.com or the Academy of Interior Design.com. And I'm also on at the Design Rules on Instagram and TikTok, and Wanda Colon on Facebook.
Awesome. And you mentioned that obviously during the pandemic you had the ability to kind of adapt to that. Are the
Mhm.
classes being done uh, hybrid, in person, both, or how's that?
So, yeah, we created all of
Okay.
that. We created all of that during COVID. Um, we have hybrid classes where you take the class online, but then you meet with me for three
Okay.
days via Zoom, where then we go through the exercises. Then we have complete virtual classes where the entire class is given online. And then we still do have the live classes. I teach in Los Angeles twice a year the interior design class and twice a year the home staging class. So all of that is on our website, and you can actually access both websites through the Academy of Homestaging.com. And you'll see all of the instructors and all of our bios, where we come from, why we're there.
Okay.
And then you also, what I love is you'll see like some of our most successful graduates, and their profiles are on there as well.
Awesome. Awesome. For those that are just joining, we have TV host, lifestyle expert Wanda Colon with us, and just again, catching up with her and all of her successes and also what she's currently doing to, serve her community. Talking about a little bit of your previous experiences, one thing that I always enjoyed was your Spanglish channel. And so I wanted to challenge you. We talked about this before we recorded, and I think it would be a great idea. We're going to have like a mofongo battle. For those of you that don't know what mofongo is, it's a dish from the Caribbean, specifically Puerto Rico. It's kind of like a mashed plantain that is usually with garlic and olive oil, and it's just goodness. And a pilon.
I
So
love it that you said it's just
yeah, it's
goodness,
good.
because
It's what it is. Yeah.
it is
But there's
goodness.
different ways of making it, and it's not a complicated dish, but it does have an art to it. So I think we should actually schedule another session where we can have some fun with that.
I think the next time we're both in
Yeah.
Reading, so I know some chefs here,
Okay.
so I think the next time we're both in Reading, we definitely should do
Done.
this,
Yeah.
because I think it would be really fun. And the one thing you need to know about me, I'm super competitive.
I know. I know. So I didn't expect any less. It wouldn't be fun if you weren't. And then that's the whole point. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely, that's awesome. But it's always good connecting with old friends, and I definitely will. Hopefully, well, this will not be such a big gap this time. We'll definitely be seeing each
Right.
other sooner than later. Thank you so much for sharing
You're
your
welcome.
time with
I
me.
wish you continued success.
Likewise, likewise. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So, for those of you watching again, we're going to have Wanda's contact information, the Academy's information on all social media platforms, and obviously on this video, if you're tying in from YouTube or LinkedIn, whatever, we're going to obviously have it on different platforms as well. You're tuned in with InterSys. I'm Johnny Romero, your host. If you don't mind, Wanda, one thing that I usually have guests say at the end is something like, are you tuned in? Or you can say, I'm tuned in. Either one of those is perfectly okay.
I'm always tuned in.
Awesome. Thank you so much.